concessions were not granted through the budget to construct alcohol distilleries. A statement from Minister Partli Champika Ranavaka. UN Human Rights Commissioner delivers report on Sri Lanka at the UNHRC. Dengue Eradication Week declared for Kinya Trincomalee. Luxury vehicles corrode in Kolpiti. Third phase of the Hambantota port to be carried out using Chinese funds without interest.
If you want to know what's been happening in Sri Lanka and across the world, well, you're watching the right channel. This is Primetime News live on News First with me, Mahina Bongzo.
Good evening, I am Shahan Jarampati. Let's take a look at those stories in detail.
United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Prince Zeid Ra'ad Al Hussein, says that promising progress has been made on constitutional reforms in the country. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights was addressing the 34th session of the UN Human Rights Council a short while ago.
The report acknowledges some positive advances on human rights and constitutional reform. Although progress to establish transitional justice mechanisms has been slow, I am heartened by the recent report of the Consultation Task Force on Reconciliation Mechanisms, synthesizing thousands of submissions from across all ethnic and religious groups. What is needed now is agreement on a comprehensive strategy with a timeline and detailed benchmarks to address all transitional justice pillars identified in Resolution 30/1. Sri Lanka's ratifications of the Convention on Enforced Disappearances and the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities are also significant steps forward. They now require rapid integration into domestic law in accordance with international standards. Following last year's legislation to set up an Office of Missing Persons, I recommend there be swift progress in establishing this office, which could play a crucial role in resolving enforced disappearances. In the face of rising frustration among victims, a number of confidence-building measures must be accelerated. These include the release of land occupied by the military, which remains slow, while an effort is underway to repeal the Prevention of Terrorism Act and replace it with legislation that complies with international human rights law. This work has yet to be concluded. The design of truth and reparations processes appear to be underway, but these efforts need to be in consultation with the victims and civil society. It is important for the country's future for the government to send the signal that impunity is no longer tolerated. I am particularly troubled by the lack of progress in a number of emblematic cases. This continuing unwillingness or inability by the authorities to address impunity reinforces the need for international participation in a judicial mechanism. For this to be credible, it should include a special counsel, foreign judges and defense lawyers, and authorized prosecutors and investigators.
I take this opportunity today to reiterate our resolve and reaffirm our commitment to the reconciliation process and commitments articulated in Resolution 30/1. As the Council is aware, Sri Lanka has been working with the United States and the other main co-sponsors of 30/1, UK, Macedonia and Montenegro, on a resolution for a 2-year extension of the timeline for fulfillment of commitments made in Resolution 30/1. We are pleased to announce that Sri Lanka will be co-sponsoring this resolution, and we thank the Council, the UN, and our bilateral partners for their support to strengthen reconciliation in Sri Lanka and for this extension of the timeline.
President Maithripala Sirisena landed in Moscow today for an official visit.
President Maithripala Sirisena and his delegation were received at the Domodedovo International Airport in Moscow by Russian Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Igor Morgulov and other high-ranking officials of the Russian Federation. The President is being accompanied by Foreign Minister Mangala Samaravira, Ministers S.B. Navinna, Susil Premajayanta and Dayasiri Jayasekara. President Maithripala Sirisena will officially meet his Russian counterpart, President Vladimir Putin, at the Kremlin tomorrow. This is the first official visit by Sri Lankan head of state to Russia since Prime Minister Sirimava Bandaranaike in 1974. During the President's visit, several bilateral agreements are to be signed between the two countries in the fields of fisheries, tourism, culture, science and technology, cultural and education cooperation.
The proposal to amend limitations on the advance account for raids carried out by the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption was taken up for debate in Parliament today.
The highest number of complaints were received in 2015, where they recorded 1,512 complaints. In 2016, 1,244 complaints were received. However, even though so many complaints had been lodged, only 25 cases have been filed in courts. 5,062 corruption cases were filed since 2010, but only 57 court cases have been filed and only 12 of them have been resolved. There is a backlog of over 3,000 complaints at this commission. So establish a separate court to examine bribery and corruption cases. At the moment, this commission only exists in Colombo. I propose that this commission be established at district level at the very least and strengthen this process. The big fish of the corrupt did not get caught to this trap. But for the first time, during the tenure of Dilrukshi Dias as Director General of the Commission, it filed cases against 4 former ministers, a former Foreign Minister, former Consumer Affairs Minister, former Ports Minister and a former Mass Media Minister for the misuse of funds. Also for the first time, the Bribery Commission filed cases against a former Defence Secretary and 3 of our former Navy commanders with regard to the infamous Avantgarde transaction. A case was filed against a minister of the current government as well. Investigations on a minister of the current government who constantly blabbers were also completed. The complaint against the state minister of this government were examined and completed. These complaints were examined and brought before court. There was also a former parliamentarian, but Speaker, this person had the powers of a vice president rather than a parliamentarian. Investigations were conducted against this person as well. Following the resignation of Dilrukshi Dias, a new Director General was appointed. It has been more than 5 months since his appointment, and one of your honourable MPs told this very House that only one case has been filed during the course of this year. Now the investigations on a minister and state minister of the current government had been completed and the Director General resigned from her post during the final moments before cases were filed. We would like to know as to why cases have not been filed against these persons 5 months on. Moreover, the investigation on the former First Lady had also been completed, but no case has been filed before court. Why? There was a time when this commission was politically influenced, and now you too are trying to do the same. The Criminal Investigations Department is carrying out investigations into several serious crimes which have created massive controversy today, like the murders of Wasim Tajuddin and Lasantha Vikramatunga, the abductions of Ekna Aligoda and Keith Noya, Ravi Raja's murder and the assaults on Upali Tennakon and Poddala Jayantha. So there are several such investigations which are being conducted into the bombings on media institutions and assassination of journalists and into the murders and crimes which took place during the dark era of the country. Rogues generally got caught when they fought among themselves, and it was a aggrieved party, the public, who benefited out of this. The people say the attendance benefit of MPs are being increased by 2,500 rupees. Their other benefits are being increased by 100,000 rupees, and the luxury vehicles at the cost of 540 million rupees are being bought for the comfort of ministers and MPs. While all this is being provided, the salaries of those in the Bribery Commission who are capturing all the rogues are reducing. This is not what should happen. It is our salaries and benefits which should be reduced. These facilities should be given to the FCID, the Bribery Commission and the police. We do not expect a character certificate from the rogues on these institutions.
Major General Mahesh Senanayake was appointed as the new Chief of Staff of the Sri Lanka Army today. Defence Secretary Karunasena Hettiarachchi said the appointment was made by President Maithripala Sirisena. Major General Mahesh Senanayake was appointed as the new Chief of Staff after the position was left vacant following the retirement of Major General Channa Gunathilaka.
Last August, we highlighted the fact that several luxury vehicles are parked and left to rust at the old Speaker's residence in Kolpiti, Colombo, which is also known as Mumtaz Mahal. Despite the revelation, these vehicles continue to remain at this location.
These vehicles have been parked at the premises of Mumtaz Mahal, the former official residence of the Speaker, which is located down R80 Mile Mawate in Kolpiti. Who owns these vehicles? Why are these vehicles simply parked here? What purpose will these vehicles serve? Who left these vehicles here to rust? These are some of the questions that could be raised by anyone who witnesses the manner in which they have been parked. Rather than letting these vehicles rust, shouldn't they be repaired and restored for the use of the state?
The Criminal Investigations Department on Monday informed court of a number of details that surfaced in the Lasantha Wickramatunge homicide investigation.
The CID informed the Mount Lavinia Magistrates Court that it possesses evidence that an elite unit operating under former Military Intelligence Director retired Major General Kapila Hindi Vitharuna targeted journalists and that it was the murder of veteran journalist Lasantha Wickramatunge. Detectives reported these facts to court following a statement obtained from former Army Commander Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca. The matter was also raised at the Cabinet media briefing today. We were there when your colleague Lasantha Wickramatunge was killed. He was stabbed with a sharp weapon in broad daylight. Who had the need to have Lasantha Wickramatunge killed? In the report produced by the CID to the Mount Lavinia Magistrates Court, the name of Gotabaya Rajapaksa is mentioned a lot. There is reference to Rajapaksas in that report.
The first autopsy of the Lasantha Wickramatunge homicide says that he was shot. But the second autopsy says that he was stabbed with a sharp weapon. The CID informed this to court. Will you not conduct an investigation as to who changed the autopsy report? Who called for that report? And how did the first report contradict the findings of the second autopsy report?
We will definitely investigate it and the matter of concealing evidence in the Tajuddin homicide. For us to say that, it must be announced by the court and the CID. I am able to tell you who did it. Based on the information, it is clear that the Rajapaksas operated a death squad. Apart from Lasantha and Tajuddin, several others were killed. The citizen media was attacked and bombed. There is information that military hardware was used for these attacks. It will take time to prove this in court.
Persons in civil attire had visited homes and taken away persons without identifying themselves. I was with Lasantha Wickramatunge. Only Lasantha Wickramatunge reported on those events. Therefore, he was silenced. Raviraj was with me and spoke out on this. He too was silenced. In addition, 551 persons from Colombo and suburbs were taken away and killed. I have that list and I am happy to inform Gotabaya Rajapaksa that I am in possession of that list. These persons were abducted and 2 or 3 days later, their bodies were discovered in Colombo. Do not deny this. The people cannot be deceived. They must be held accountable for their actions. You were the Secretary of Defence at that time. Do not blame it on others.
Yesterday, we brought to you details regarding a possible malpractice at the Sri Lanka Railways with regard to the purchasing of locomotives for the upcountry railway line. Newsfirst delves deeper into the issue today.
The Sunday Observer reported recently that Sri Lanka Railways plans to import 12 locomotives with 7 FDL diesel engines from General Electric or GE. The article alleges that the tender specifications were inexplicably weighted towards those of the GE engine to limit the number of eligible bidders. Today, Newsfirst has learned that prior to finalizing the tender specifications, a delegation from Sri Lanka Railways travelled to Tibet on an assessment and study tour of GE locomotives. The delegation of 4 members also included the General Manager of Railways, BAP Arya Ratna. According to sources, the study tour had been funded by General Electric. The report adds that, globally, the 7 FDL engines have experienced catastrophic failures that have resulted in significant damage and locomotive fires across the globe. Our multiple attempts to contact General Manager of Railways BAP Arya Ratna proved to be futile. However, railway officials speaking to Newsfirst said that as the tender has not been finalized, they could not comment on the matter, adding that they have not received information regarding failures of the 7 FDL engine. Speaking to Newsfirst, Deputy Minister of Transport Ashok Abesinghe noted that he is aware of the tender to import the locomotives, adding that he would investigate into the matter and reveal further details.
Still in local news, was a clear directive given to the Superintendent of Public Debt following the Monetary Board meeting on the 23rd of February 2015. Newsfirst Zulfiq Farzan has today's report.
Providing evidence before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry, the Secretary to the Monetary Board, H.A. Karunaratne, said there was no clear indication on the directive that was to be given to the Superintendent of Public Debt ahead of the 27th February 2015 bond auction. The draft minutes of the meeting were subject to amendments on several occasions when submitted to Deputy Governor P. Samarasiri. The final draft only came to Karunaratne shortly after the 13th of March 2015, 14 days after the bond auction. Monetary Board note, which read, explore the possibility to issue 30-year bonds, was changed to issue 30-year bonds. Governor Arjuna Mahendran's directive to move away from direct placements was changed to temporarily suspend direct placements. The council representing the former governor questioned the witness on the 501 staff transfers mentioned during his testimony. Council said these were staff transfers and postings. It came to light that in 2015, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka established a regulatory and compliance department and a risk management department. The witness did not inform the Attorney General about the establishment of these new departments, which resulted in the reshuffle. Former Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka was present during the sessions today as well. Ananda Silva, the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, is to give evidence before the Commission tomorrow.
Parliamentarian Veera Wanza, currently remanded for allegedly misusing state vehicles and causing a loss of 90 million rupees to the state, has commenced a hunger strike.
Sources from the prison state that the MP commenced a hunger strike at his cell this morning. It is reported that Veera Wanza had resorted to this action after his bail application was rejected twice. There's a law and act with regards to bail in the country. There's also a law when it comes to granting bail for the misuse of state property. Facts must be presented before court. Bail will not be granted simply because a person commences a hunger strike. He's not a political prisoner, he's a suspect in a criminal case. I'm not aware if you are in the food committee. On a previous occasion, MP Veera Wanza commenced a fast opposite the UN office in Colombo.
State Minister of International Trade Sujiva Senasinghe says that construction under the third stage of the Hambantota port is scheduled to get underway with Chinese interest-free funding. An agreement on development work in Hambantota is to be signed between the government of Sri Lanka and the China Merchant Port Holdings.
Interest will not be charged for the third stage. The interest ratio is 7%. We are responsible to pay the 7% interest despite the changes in government. However, China is carrying out development work under the third stage without charging an interest. Will the third stage be a joint venture? It is joint. Sri Lanka will have 20% and may also have the possibility to obtain another 20%. Therefore, there is a high probability that this will come under the control of Sri Lanka. Chinese loans were obtained for the first and second stages. We are discussing on a mechanism to dismiss this. We have a plan and future measures will be taken. The complete agreement will be drafted. There will be a better understanding once there is finality. Shouldn't an agreement be signed before work commences? Work has already begun. We can sign an agreement even by tomorrow.
You're watching Primetime News live on News First. In more local news, the salary particulars of the CEO of the Information Communication Technology Agency not being revealed was questioned at the Cabinet media briefing today.
පොඩි ප්‍රශ්නයක් අර ICTA CEO දැන් ප්‍රතුන්දරගෙනගේ පත්ත ක්‍රියාත්මකයිනේ මුන්දන් කනගේගේ අපි වැටුප් සම්බන්ධ ප්‍රවෘත්ති වාර්තාවක් ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න ලිඛිත ඉල්ලීමක් කරලා තිබ්බා. නමුත් අපිට අපි ඉල්ලුවා අපි ගාවේ ලිපි තියෙනවා විදුලි සංදේශ සහ අත්දැක පහසුකම් අමාත්‍යාංශය. තාම උත්තරයක් හම්බෙලා නැහැ. උත්තරයක් ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා. ඒ උත්තරේ සඳහන් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ රාජ්‍ය සේවකයන්ගේ තොරතුරු පෞද්ගලිකයි රහසිගතයි. ඒ නිසා මේව ලබා දෙන්න බැහැ කියලා. අපි නිවුස් ගහන සේවකෙක් නෙමෙයි. ඉල්ලන්න පුළුවන් වර්ෂ
There are several areas that you can ask these details from. One is the public authorities and public figures. You can only ask for details of public institutions. Semi-government institutions do not come under this act. The government is bound to provide details of the institution, but you cannot provide the salary particulars of an employee.
The letter we received goes on to say that the salary particulars of the CEO of ICTA is private and confidential.
The epidemiology unit says over 23,000 patients suspected to have contracted the dengue virus have been reported from across the country. According to the latest reports received from government hospitals, the virus appears to have spread to the Kantale area in Trincomalee.
Director of the Kantale-based hospital, Dr. D.G.M. Costa, said 43 dengue patients were identified over the past few days. A total of 35 patients arrived at the hospital today to receive treatment for fever. The hospital has run out of space to accommodate the increasing number of patients. While the general public is being strongly urged to keep their environments clean amidst the outbreak of dengue, our cameras captured footage of the Kantale public market, which has become a haven for the breeding of mosquitoes. Area residents say it has been over 10 years since this drainage system was constructed. However, they add the water has not receded since its construction.
The Ministry of Health took measures to initiate a dengue eradication week in the Trincomalee district starting today amidst a serious outbreak of the epidemic in the district. In a show of support, the government and the medical teams are also assisting in the cleanup operation.
The Ministry of Health said 150 teams of mosquito eradicating officials have been dispatched around the district to inspect homes and wells and also to fumigate environment conducive for the dengue mosquito. The Health Ministry has also taken measures to assign 20 additional doctors and 20 nurses to the Trincomalee General Hospital and Kinya Base Hospital to contain the outbreak of the disease. Meanwhile, the government and the medical team distributed items collected for those affected by the dengue epidemic in the Trincomalee district for the second day today. The items were distributed in the Kinya Divisional Secretariat area. Members of Newsfirst cleaned up public areas and homes with the assistance of the Tri-Forces, police and civil security forces. The government and the medical team held an awareness program for school students as well.
Well, just taking a look back at some of the stories that we have been covering here on Newsfirst Primetime News and taking a look at the headlines and recapping on that. Tax concessions were not granted through the budget to construct alcohol distilleries. A statement from Minister Patali Champika Ranawaka. Human Rights Commissioner delivers report on Sri Lanka at the UNHRC and actually commends Sri Lanka's efforts with regard to human rights. The Dengue Eradication Week was declared for Kinya and Trincomalee as the cases and the number of dengue patients continue to rise. Gamad 2 and the Newsfirst team have also stepped up the initiatives to combat the virus in this district. And then luxury vehicles corrode in Kolpiti, where we brought to you the reports of these luxury vehicles being parked at the Mumtaz Mahal in Kolpiti. Now moving on to one of our headline-making stories, Minister of Megapolis and Western Development, Patali Champika Ranawaka, says that the government's tax concessions for development projects in the Eastern Province is not for alcohol distilleries to be constructed. Now, the minister expressed the following views regarding the alcohol distillery that is being constructed in the Kalkuda area in Batticaloa.
We are completely against facts and points that are mentioned in the budget document being used to propagate alcohol. The tax concessions were provided by the government in the eastern and Nuwa provinces to develop these areas and to provide jobs, not to construct alcohol distilleries. We are completely against it. The President in his election manifesto states that steps will be taken to save the country from intoxicants, including tobacco and alcohol. Quote, Cliques connected with drugs and liquor were invited and accommodated in politics, while our people who were victims of those substances suffered heavily. These drugs and liquor businessmen were given cabinet and other ministerial portfolios in the alliance government. It is by spending a minute fraction of the billion-fold income earned from drugs and liquor that useless political propaganda is being conducted throughout the country today. End of quote. However, the details pertaining to the construction of an alcohol distillery on a 19-acre plot of land in the Calcutta area in the eastern province came to light recently. According to the official website of the W.M. Mendes Company, the chairman of the company is Arjun Joseph Aloysius. The Commissioner of the Excise Department recently spoke to Newsfirst and stated that the W.M. Mendes Company, which is a company of the Perpetual Treasuries Group, has to pay excise duties of 469 million rupees. Perpetual Treasuries, which is owned by Arjun Aloysius, the son-in-law of the former governor of the central bank, has been linked to the central bank bond controversy as well. Public representatives question as to how a company that is linked to the bond scam is able to carry out vast investments like this. Before 18 weeks lapsed after the new government came into power, the approval was granted for a new alcohol distillery in Batiklo. This distillery is being constructed by W.M. Mendes Company. The chairman of this company is the son-in-law of the former governor of the central bank, Arjun Aloysius. The construction is being carried out even now. When the public opposed the construction, they did not listen.
I am proud to say that we have implemented 8% of pictorial warnings in all tobacco packs, and very recently we increased the taxes of tobacco, as it is one of the most effective ways of discouraging initiation. I recall working closely with ADIC as a young opposition member of parliament in the 1980s. I faced many challenges when I proposed to implement pictorial health warning on tobacco packs in Sri Lanka.
The Sri Lankan cricket team Angela Matthews has been shortlisted as the most popular sports personality of the year at the Sports First Platinum Awards. The award ceremony will take place on the 31st of March at Stein Studios.
And with that, we conclude tonight's edition of Primetime News. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Veera Wanza.
And I'm Shah Jarangpati. Good night and take care.